Before his death, Werner Klemperer, the actor who brought Colonel Klink to life on Hogan's Heroes, revealed a shocking truth about Hogan's Heroes that left fans stunned. His iconic role in the satirical sitcom was more than just acting. It carried personal and emotional weight. What was this revelation, and how did it change how we view the show today?
If we might make it.
Forget about might, we will.
What's going on here?
Merely acting on your suggestion, sir.
What suggestion?
You said to get the fellows engaged in some voluntary activity, and I've got them working on sort of a jigsaw puzzle there, tore up some old maps.
You call that an activity?
Would you rather see them digging tunnels, sir?
Don't even say that.
Hogan's Heroes left an indelible mark on television history. Airing from 1965 to 1971, the show broke new ground by mixing comedy with the dark backdrop of World War II. It was an audacious concept, creating humor from a setting in a German POW camp. But it worked, drawing millions of viewers. The clever writing, slapstick humor, and the memorable characters quickly made Hogan's Heroes a beloved staple in households nationwide. Colonel Klink, played by Werner Klemperer, was at the heart of the show. Klink was the bumbling, often clueless Nazi officer running the POW camp. While his character was meant to be a villain, Klemperer's portrayal made him a figure ridicule rather than fear. His comedic timing and exaggerated antics turned Colonel Klink into a fan favorite, and this role became the defining one of his career. Now, before Hogan's Heroes, Klemperer had enjoyed a steady but relatively quiet acting career. He appeared in various television shows and films, yet he was far from a household name. But everything changed with the success of Hogan's Heroes. The show catapulted Klemperer into the spotlight, making him a star almost overnight. His portrayal of Colonel Klink became iconic, and he earned multiple Emmy nominations for his performance. What made Hogan's Heroes stand out was its unique comedic take on a very serious and tragic period in history. World War II had been the subject of countless movies and dramas, but never had it been approached with such humor. By portraying the Germans as buffoons and the Allied POWs as clever and resourceful, the show offered a sense of catharsis to audiences who had lived through the war or were familiar with its horrors. It allowed viewers to laugh at a time when the world was still recovering from the devastation. But behind the laughter, there was something far more profound Klemperer revealed about his role. Werner Klemperer's connection to Hogan's Heroes ran much deeper than most people knew. Born in 1920 in Cologne, Germany, Klemperer came from a Jewish family. His father, Otto Klemperer, was a renowned conductor, but their peaceful life in Germany was shattered when Adolf Hitler rose to power. In 1935, with the increasing danger posed by the Nazis, Werner's family fled Germany, seeking refuge in the United States. This personal history gave Klemperer a unique perspective on his role as Colonel Klink. Having lived through the horrors of Nazi rule, Klemperer understood the significance of portraying a Nazi officer on screen. His own family had escaped persecution, and the idea of playing a character who represented the regime that forced them to flee came with a deep emotional weight. Klemperer had mixed feelings about the role from the beginning. On one hand, it was an opportunity to secure a major part in a successful television show, which was a big break for any actor. On the other hand, he was being asked to play a character from the same regime that had uprooted his family and millions of others. Now, this internal conflict troubled Klemperer, as he didn't want to appear as though he were making light of the horrors of the Nazi regime. However, Klemperer ultimately found a way to reconcile these conflicting emotions. He saw Colonel Klink as a way to ridicule the Nazis rather than glorify them. In his portrayal, Klink was never meant to be a symbol of strength or intelligence. Instead, he was foolish, incompetent, and always outwitted by the Allied prisoners. This interpretation of the character allowed Klemperer to feel more comfortable with the role, as he wasn't contributing to a harmful narrative. But this wasn't enough. Klemperer had one crucial condition before agreeing to take on the role. Colonel Klink could never succeed. In other words, Klink would always lose in the end, ensuring that the Nazis were shown in a negative light. This was Klemperer's way of making peace with the character and the historical context behind the show. The producers agreed to his demand, which became a defining aspect of the series. This deep connection to his past drove Werner to make one more surprising demand before finally accepting the role. One of the most significant conditions Werner Klemperer placed before accepting the role of Colonel Klink was that his character would never win. This wasn't a small request. It fundamentally shaped the direction of Hogan's Heroes. Klemperer insisted that Colonel Klink would always be portrayed as incompetent and unable to outsmart the Allied prisoners. For him, the Nazi officer he played need to be never seen as triumphant or heroic. This decision had a profound impact on the show's narrative. While Hogan's Heroes was a comedy, it was set in the serious context of World War II. Making Klink a bumbling, clueless officer not only softened the dark nature of the setting, but also ensured that the Nazis were always depicted as the losers. Klink's failures became a running theme, with each episode reinforcing that the prisoners were always the ones in control. This approach allowed the show to maintain its comedic tone without trivializing the real-life atrocities of the Nazi regime. Klemperer's insistence on this condition was more than just an artistic choice. It was deeply personal. As someone who had fled Nazi Germany, Klemperer could not stomach the idea of portraying a successful or competent Nazi. By making Colonel Klink a figure of ridicule, Klemperer ensured that the character would never be taken seriously, further diminishing the image of the regime that he had grown up fearing. His stance helped balance the show's humor with its historical context, ensuring that the audience never lost sight of who the true villains were. Now, this decision also gave Hogan's Heroes a unique edge. While many comedies of the era featured lovable or relatable main characters, Hogan's Heroes flipped the script by centering on the antagonist who was constantly undermined and made fun of. Klink's ineptitude became one of the show's defining characteristics, and audiences came to expect his inevitable failures. This kept the humor fresh and allowed the show to maintain its lighthearted feel, even within its wartime setting. But as Hogan's Heroes continued, another twist emerged, something that Werner didn't reveal until years later. Werner Klemperer's time on Hogan's Heroes wasn't just about portraying a comedic character. It was also about building strong relationships with his co-stars. Among them, his bond with Bob Crane, who played Colonel Hogan, stood out the most. Crane, the central figure of the show, was known for his outgoing personality and charm, traits that made him the perfect fit for his role as a quick-witted Hogan. Klemperer, on the other hand, was more reserved and serious, but the contrast between their personalities worked to their advantage, both on and off the set. The chemistry between Klemperer and Crane played a significant role in shaping the dynamic of the show. Their characters were constantly at odds, with Hogan always managing to outsmart Klink. Yet there was an underlying mutual respect between them, even in the comedic moments. Off-screen, this mirrored reality. Klemperer respected Crane's talent and ability to command the screen, while Crane admired Klemperer's dedication to his craft. Now, their friendship wasn't just professional. It extended beyond the cameras. They shared many lighthearted moments on set, which helped foster the relaxed atmosphere that Hogan's Heroes was known for. Crane's humor often helped lighten the mood during the long shooting days, and Klemperer, though typically serious in demeanor, appreciated the camaraderie. Their interactions on set translated into the seamless comedic exchanges viewers saw on screen, making the show's humor feel genuine. However, their friendship wasn't without its complexities. Klemperer was aware of the darker sides of Crane's life, particularly his struggles with personal issues. Crane's untimely and tragic death in 1978 shocked the world, but for Klemperer, it was even more devastating. He reflected on their friendship with a sense of loss, knowing that Crane had been dealing with internal struggles that not everyone around him had seen. Even with their close bond, there were aspects of Crane's life that remained hidden from even his closest friends. Yet behind this camaraderie, Werner revealed something about Bob Crane that shocked everyone. The tragic and mysterious death of Bob Crane in 1978 cast a long shadow over Hogan's Heroes and its cast. Crane was found murdered in his Arizona apartment and beaten to death with a blunt object. The circumstances surrounding his death were, and remain, a mystery. Although multiple investigations were conducted, and his friend John Henry Carpenter was arrested, no one was ever convicted, and the case remains unsolved to this day. Werner Klemperer, like the rest of the world, was deeply shaken by Crane's sudden and violent death. For Klemperer, this wasn't just the loss of a colleague, but rather the loss of a dear friend with whom he'd shared countless memories on and off the set. In interviews after Crane's death, Klemperer expressed his shock and grief, reflecting on the complexities of his friend's life. Crane had lived a dual existence. On one hand, he was the lovable and charismatic star of Hogan's Heroes, but on the other, he struggled with personal issues and darker aspects of his private life. Klemperer avoided delving too much into Crane's troubled personal life in public, choosing instead to focus on the positive aspects of their time together. He often spoke about Crane's incredible talent, recalling how effortlessly Crane could slip into the role of Colonel Hogan and bring energy to the set. Klemperer's reflections on Crane's life were bittersweet. He acknowledged Crane's struggles, but also remembered him fondly as a friend and brilliant actor. Crane's death also affected how people viewed Hogan's Heroes. The show, once a symbol of lighthearted escapism, was now tied to a real-life tragedy. The unsolved nature of the crime led to endless speculation. But Klemperer tried to keep the focus on Crane's contributions to the entertainment world, rather than the gruesome details of his death. In interviews years after the show ended, Klemperer spoke about the emotional toll Crane's passing took on him and the rest of the cast. While Hogan's Heroes continued to live on in syndication, it was impossible to separate the show from the tragedy that followed. Crane's death left a lasting impact, not just on his friends and family, but on the millions of fans who had watched him week after week. But this wasn't the only shocking event from the Hogan's Heroes cast. Hogan's Heroes was unique in its ability to mix lighthearted comedy with the serious backdrop of World War II. At a time when most shows avoided such sensitive topics, Hogan's Heroes boldly turned a German POW camp into the setting for slapstick humor and witty banter. The genius of the show lay in its satire. It wasn't just about making people laugh. It was about mocking the very people responsible for some of the darkest moments in history. The show portrayed the Nazis, specifically Colonel Klink and Sergeant Schultz, as bumbling, clueless, and easily manipulated. This was no accident. By reducing these authority figures to comic relief, the creators of Hogan's Heroes took away their power, turning the oppressors into the butt of the joke. In doing so, they allowed viewers to laugh at a very painful part of history without ever diminishing the gravity of the real events. Werner Klemperer played a pivotal role in shaping the satire. His portrayal of Colonel Klink was the key to the show's success. Klink wasn't just an incompetent officer. He was a symbol of the absurdity of the Nazi regime. Klemperer knew the importance of striking the right balance between comedy and respect for the historical context. Having fled Nazi Germany himself, Klemperer brought a level of understanding and sensitivity to his role that allowed him to navigate the line between satire and offense. Klemperer's insistence that Klink would never win was central to the show's satire. He made sure that the audience always saw the Nazis as weak and foolish, ensuring that the humor never crossed into a dangerous territory. His performance turned Klink into a caricature, a figure who could be ridiculed without glorifying the regime he represented. By playing Klink as a fool, Klemperer permitted viewers to laugh at the Nazis without forgetting the real horrors they caused. The brilliance of Hogan's Heroes lies in its ability to use humor as a weapon against tyranny. By creating a world where the Nazis were constantly outsmarted by their clever Allied prisoners, the show offered a form of revenge through laughter. It allowed audiences to reclaim power from a dark chapter in history, all while enjoying the antics of the characters that they'd come to love. Yet, as Werner looked back on his role, there was one crucial decision that changed everything. One of the most recognizable features of Colonel Klink, the character Werner Klemperer portrayed on Hogan's Heroes, was the monocle he wore in nearly every scene. That single prop became symbolic of Klink's persona, serious yet comically inept. For Klemperer, the monocle wasn't just a costume accessory. It actually became a cherished keepsake, a tangible reminder of the character that had defined a significant part of his career. After Hogan's Heroes ended in 1971, Klemperer kept the monocle as a personal memento. It was a connection to his time on the show and the role that had brought him widespread fame. Over the years, he would speak fondly of the monocle, recounting how it was an essential part of his portrayal of Klink. No, it wasn't just a prop. It was an extension of his character, symbolizing Klink's pompousness and cluelessness all at once. However, the story of the monocle took an unexpected turn. Years after the show had wrapped, Klemperer was devastated to discover that the monocle had mysteriously disappeared. He had kept it safely stored away, but one day it was simply gone. Whether it had been lost, stolen, or misplaced, Klemperer never knew for sure. The disappearance of the monocle hit him hard, as it was more than just an object. It represented years of memories, both on and off the set of Hogan's Heroes. The loss of the monocle was a source of frustration for Klemperer. In interviews, he would mention how much he missed it, and how it felt like losing a part of his character he had worked so hard to create. The monocle wasn't just a costume. It was a link to the past, a piece of the legacy he had left behind through his portrayal of Colonel Klink. But it wasn't just the props and characters. There was a deep emotional story Werner shared before his death. In the final years of his life, Werner Klemperer gave several interviews reflecting on his long and storied career. These interviews offered a glimpse into the man behind the famous monocle, revealing both the joys and the struggles he faced throughout his time in the entertainment industry. As Klemperer grew older, he became more open about his personal experiences, particularly his complicated feelings about Hogan's Heroes and the legacy it left behind. One of the most surprising revelations Klemperer made in his later years concerned the lasting impact of the show. While Hogan's Heroes has always been seen as lighthearted satire, Klemperer revealed a deeper truth. The show, for him, was a way to fight back against the Nazi regime that had forced his family to flee Germany. Playing Colonel Klink was more than just an acting role. It was a personal statement against tyranny. Klemperer used humor to strip the Nazis of their power, turning them into clowns for the world to laugh at. But there was more. In one of his final interviews, Klemperer revealed a shocking truth that changed the way fans viewed Hogan's Heroes. He admitted that despite the show's comedic nature, there was always a sense of sadness behind the laughter. For Klemperer, portraying Colonel Klink was a constant reminder of the real horrors his family had endured. Each time he donned the Nazi uniform, he felt the weight of history, knowing that his performance was rooted in his own experiences of fear and loss. While the show brought joy to millions, it also carried emotional weight for Klemperer that most fans had never fully realized. Now, this revelation left many fans and cast members stunned. Up until that point, Hogan's Heroes had been viewed as a simple comedy, but Klemperer's words gave it new meaning. It became clear that the show had deeper layers, one that spoke to personal trauma, resistance, and survival. Klemperer's decision to turn Colonel Klink into a fool wasn't just for laughs. It was his way of reclaiming power from the painful past. Werner Klemperer's final revelations about Hogan's Heroes have left a lasting impact, showing us that even in the most lighthearted shows, there are deeper, emotional stories at play. His role as Colonel Klink was more than comedy. It was a personal victory over the regime that shaped his past. Now, if you found the story fascinating, make sure to hit like and subscribe for more incredible untold stories about your favorite TV legends.